Perfect. My name is Taylor Duran. I am from San Antonio. I am a author writing a fantasy series loosely based on my life and traumatic experiences. But I do want to piggyback off what Christina said and tell everybody that all the parents here, there is no parent that is going to raise their child without some sort of childhood trauma. And then also what she said was that, setting boundaries with talking to the mailman versus talking to your child, coming from a child's perspective, talking to your elder with respect but setting boundaries is one of the hardest things you can do. But talking to your peer and setting boundaries is much more healthy. But anyway, my story starts, about 6 years old when I had a cousin who, on my dad's side, was very rude and bullied me to the point where it was more along the lines of he would make me cry every time I went over to family gatherings, and my dad would kind of just intervene and tell him to stop, but he just wouldn't. So what happened after that, as a result of that, is I started feeling more of the shame than the guilt. And if anybody knows what the difference is, I'll explain it. It's shame is I am bad, guilt is I did bad. Um, so while I was growing up with this cousin who was just an absolute jerk, he did reinforce a lot of things now that I should have had back then, meaning I should have been able to put down boundaries with him more clearly than what I have done in the past, right? So that is one thing that I am learning is how to put down boundaries. And just because someone is blood to you does not necessarily make them family. Another cousin on my dad's side, I distinctly remember him saying something to me, and it was absolutely disrespectful, and I couldn't even believe that he said it. But I was on the phone with him, and I said, "Hey, why am I never, invited to family functions?" And his reply was, "You're never invited, but you're always welcome." And that kind of response to that, like to a child, even if no matter what the age is, that is kind of like a slap in the face. So that's kind of happened from 6 years old. After I turned 8, my mom uh, met her one of her old boyfriends, and they got together. We ended up moving to a different city. And what had happened after that is he started being really abusive, which he also brought a really, really good person into my life, which is my older sister, Paige. But, a lot of the things that he did still affect me today. Meaning, like, so when he was on the phone in the car, he was a construction worker. He was a very big racist. And so, a lot of the things that he did and said were just downright wrong. And so part of me believes that it doesn't, after a certain point in your life, it doesn't matter how you're raised. It matters what you know to be right and wrong and to fix what you feel is wrong and that doesn't align with your core values, right? So there's a lot of things that I have to relearn and rewire my brain on to kind of be the better person that I know I can be. But anyway, back to the car story is like when he was on the phone in the car, right? And I were to speak or even say a word or anything like that, he would turn around and tell me to shut up and he would yell. So to this day, I still have that traumatic response to that. So if somebody's talking on the phone, they're driving, I will whisper if I need to tell them something. I will not talk in a normal voice, and it makes me terrified at their reaction. So my stepdad actually created an empath out of me. And for those of you who don't know how an empath is created or comes to be, is uh, basically if you have a parent or someone that is a guardian that is hot and cold and you're not sure what who they are going to show up as when you walk into that room, you learn to read social cues a lot better. You learn to read body language and the atmosphere way better than somebody who has that healthy parenting dynamic. And so you learn to read people far better and tune into their emotions based on body language, tone, positioning of where they are, the way they look in their eyes. So he definitely did create a that empath out of me. And he was a big guy. He was a bouncer for 20 years. So I think he was the reason why I tend to go into the fawn mode. So there's four types of responses to trauma or a aggressive event. A lot of people, the majority of everybody knows the fight or the flight, but there's also freeze and fawn. So fight, obviously, freeze, flight, you run from it. Freeze is basically you just shut down. Fawn, which is kind of the one that I do and that I'm trying to have to get out of, right? To kind of change the way that I do things is basically you try and appease the situation. You lower yourself to the point where you're not a threat, but you try and basically fix the situation through submission. At least that's my interpretation of it. Um, So after that, my dad, like around 11, my dad was very angry with God as I was growing up. Um, he he was so angry that he took it out on me a lot. Um, and so he left for a year when I was 13, came back from 12, or he left for a year when I was 11. He came back when I was 12 and then left again for a year when I was 13. I did not live with him. My parents are divorced. Uh, but one thing that does stick with me is I had my little half sister. He gave me a half sister with his new wife, and one thing that stuck with me growing up, you realize some of the things that could have been done better by your parents. But like I said, one of the things that really stuck with me is that he gave my little sister the dad that I deserved. And I think that's a very powerful realization because I feel like not everybody can make that realization and say that I'm worthy of that, right? Especially not with all the stuff that I was going through. And then getting into high school, he was very abusive in all different kinds of ways. My stepdad. And so when I turned 16, um, 10 days after my 16th birthday, my uncle committed suicide. Um, and I tattooed the last words that he ever spoke to me on my chest. It was "See you soon, babe." And if I listen really closely and think about it, I can actually hear it in his voice. He had his own troubles, he had his own depression, but he was the one who ultimately shaped my life in a way that I wouldn't have gone in had he not been my uncle. Um, So about 8 months after that, my sister died in a car accident. She actually burned to death in a car fire. And she was doing me a favor that night. One of my friends, it was 8 o'clock at night, pitch black. It was in November, so daylight savings and stuff. So it was like really, really far into the night. It was like 8 o'clock, and my friend was still sitting at school, right? So it was a Thursday, and it my friend was a female, so obviously that's going to cause a little bit more concern, because I didn't want anything to happen to her. So I called my mom. My mom sent my sister. Um, Little did we know, and we only speculate this, but she was probably drunk, and just like the girl's mom who she went to go pick up with was too drunk to come pick up her daughter. So Um, she dropped off my friend, thank God, because I don't know what I would have done if I lost both of them. And so she makes a wrong turn coming out of that neighborhood, and she ends up rolling her vehicle, and it pins up against a tree, and the engine caught fire because the fuel pump didn't shut off, and she ended up burning to death. And I put all this in my book. It was very cathartic for me to write about because, for the longest time, I blamed myself for her dying until I realized that it wasn't my fault. Um, and I had to have that realization because she chose to drink and drive. She chose not to tell my mom that she had been drinking. Um, so ultimately, it was it was a bad situation. And part of me, because I can only blame her, right? I can't blame anybody else. There's nobody to place that blame, that anger on. And sometimes I think, it would have been easier if and I don't want to say this like it, but I almost feel like my emotions would be more justified if she had been killed, murdered, right? Because that would mean that I have somebody to blame. That means that I'd have somebody to just want justice from. But at the end of the day, it was her fault, and I don't want to be mad at her because she was 20 when she died. She was the best, most protective older sister that I could ever have. Um, and so, after that, it just took a really big downhill. My dad's side of the family just turned their backs on me completely, to the point where now I don't talk to them. They are extremely toxic, and they are just clicky, right? They have their own cliques within the family, and they back each other up. And I just can't be around toxic family members. And I wouldn't even consider them family because while they share the same blood, they don't treat me the way a family member should, right? They don't give me the love that I know I deserve. So after my dad's parents died, which were the best part of that family. They were the best parts of the family. Um, we just fell apart, and I just couldn't be a part of that dynamic anymore. And it got to the point where actually my dad removed himself from that part of the family too. He didn't talk to them at all. So, over the course from 2012 to 2017, I lost six family members. Um, and it was just really hard. It was just back to back to back to back to back. So I guess my point is that resilience and deciding that you're gonna be okay and to walk your child through, and be by their side no matter what is very, very important. Um, I want to share a little bit more about how I started writing my novels. So I think it was October 2022 or 21. I started. So I had a manic episode to the point where I, on impulse, went and bought a gun. I had SI, which is suicidal ideations, but I had the thought without the plan. So the best thing that my mom ever did for me within the last 5 years, I mean, one of the best things she's ever done for me was she forced me, or not really forced me, but she convinced me to check myself into a behavioral health facility. And while I was in there, I saw all these people, all these military members, all these people who had been through a copious amount of shit. And I thought, well, why can't I help them in a way that would be beneficial? And how can I go about that? So I always knew my purpose in life was to affect great change across the world. but I never knew how until I was sitting in that group therapy session and thought and started writing. And then so that happened, and it's probably been one of the best revelations of my life is to figure out how I was going to help people, and it was just amazing. So that's pretty much my story.
Thank you for sharing that, Taylor. And I guess one of my questions I would ask for you in regards to that, when you're looking back on such a difficult period of time, what's something that you learned about yourself when you're looking back in a reflective perspective?
So if I had to look at it, it would the way that I envision my strength, because that's what it would be, is like if you had a star, right? You had a ball of light in the middle of a light-consuming darkness of space, right? And so every time you take a hit and every time you feel like you can't go on, that darkness kind of surrounds that light a little bit more. But you have a choice. We all have a choice to hold that light and shine brighter, to come back stronger, to be unwilling to bend or break or waver under the pressure and have that resilience and have that mindset that no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. Because my dad once told me, he said, Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end."
I look back on what you just shared, and there's some people that would feel guilt because of the situation with your sister. And there's some people that maybe would ask themselves, what did I do to contribute to this? What were some of the questions that you asked yourself when you were going through that, whether you thought that you played a part in it, or did you think the world is stacked against me, or was there some other questions that you were asking yourself?
I was asking myself, what, why? Why did this have to happen? What was the point of it? What was the why me? After all the trauma that I had just gone through, why is this happening? And then it wasn't until maybe in the last few years that I realized that some of the traumatic events that we go through isn't just for ourselves. It's for the people that we can help once we get through it. Does that make sense?
It does, because anytime I go through something, I always ask myself why. And there's probably a lot of people who's going to ask themselves that same question. Why me? What did I do to do this? Especially when it's parents, right? Because one thing that I think a lot of people maybe struggle with when it comes to at least step parents is that one, they feel that it's not their real parent, regardless of the relationship. And two, especially if you're a young child, you don't have a say in quotations who your mother, your father, or whoever is is dating. So sometimes if it goes poorly, you may look at the parents that has introduced this person into your life. Was there any dislike, any animosity, or any types of ill feelings to your other parent for introducing this person into your life who caused you so much harm?
No, not at all. You know, no, because my mom and I are very tight. So no, I don't blame her because she didn't know. I never told her. And um, that's that's my fault, right? Because I should have voiced that. I should have told her what was going on, and she just wanted somebody to dote on me, is what she told me years later. She just wanted somebody to be proud of me and love me the way I deserved. And it reminds me, is all this is reminding me of something that I kind of coined, is that sometimes it's our demons that protect the heroes inside of us from the pain this world so freely gives. And our inner heroes learn to live meekly in chains forged from fear. So I think pain can be comforting if you've been through it so long. And it's hard um, to navigate through that trauma, right? Because um, like I'm sure you've heard the riddle, how far can you walk into a forest, right? It's the answer is only halfway before you're walking out. So if you're looking at it, navigating trauma without any knowledge of how to do that is like being in the middle of the ocean on a castaway raft. Like you're Tom Hanks in the middle of the ocean on that raft, and the only way that you can navigate is by the stars, and you don't know how to read the stars. So you know that there's a way to navigate it. You just don't don't know how. You can't read the language in which you need to utilize to have the navigation. Um, but yeah, going through your trauma is scary all the way up until halfway, and then guess what? You're on your way out of it.
So, Taylor, let me ask you. Melissa was wondering, what is the name of your book, and where can they purchase it?
Yeah, it's Kayla Find Me. It's actually right here. Um, And you can go to my website, which is officialtaylorduran.com. It's only online right now, but I do have a literary agent. His name is Chad. He's working with me to get it in brick and mortar stores. So it's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and a few other online sites. And you can hit me up on Instagram, official Taylor Duran, if you have any questions or you just want to reach out.
Taylor, if I may share, I was looking as you were talking about your experiences, and I know so many people have similar childhood experiences. It can be such a difficult and confusing time, right? Your body's changing, your mind is changing, you're trying to navigate the world. And sometimes I look at everything that a lot of people have gone through, and I always wonder who makes it out and is productive in life, who makes it out and still struggles in life. And as you mentioned with the suicidal ideation, who doesn't make it out? There's this thing called survivor's guilt, right? Where you go through something difficult and you're the survivor and you're like, maybe I could have saved one more person, or why did I survive this, not someone else? As you progressed into adulthood and you got more comfortable within yourself, what were some of maybe the more difficult conversations you had within yourself about how far you have come from the trauma to the man you are today?
I think one of the biggest questions or thoughts, conversations with myself is, am I worthy to love myself? Am I worthy of self-love? Am I worthy of having the life that I know I deserve? And I'm the second one. I'm still processing through and I'm still struggling. The thing about trauma is that it never goes away. It's like scars, right? You get a scar, you get a cut, it becomes a scar, and it heals, but it never goes away. It's always going to be there, and it's going to alter your brain chemistry to where, it reroutes the brain, the electrical impulses that create thoughts. So it really, that's one of the conversations that I had is, how can I expect someone to love me romantically if I can't even love myself? Who am I? Who am I without the pain, without the trauma? What, going through the trauma, what replaces the pain when I heal? And that is scary to me.
Have you been able to come up with the answers to those questions?
I know I am worthy, yeah. I know that I am worthy of being loved the right way, the way I deserve. And what comes after healing through trauma, that pain, comes lightness. Like the world isn't on your shoulders anymore. It's almost like you can breathe, like, finally. And who am I without that pain? I would say I am turning into the person that I was destined to be. The best person, best possible version of myself.
So, Taylor, let me, before we wrap up here, I'm going to ask you, similar to Christina, similar to everyone else, I'm going to give you three wishes, Aladdin's genie lamp. Okay. With this, you can wish for three things that you want people to know. So, what are three things you wish people knew about the impact of trauma in their life and why?
So the first thing that I would say is don't be hard on yourself. It is okay to not be okay. But what's not okay is to continue to not be okay, know that you're not okay, and do nothing about it. You know what I mean? So that I wish that more people knew that because I think that would give the a lot of people, especially men, right? Especially men who deal with a lot more than what they say they do. And especially, Hispanic men, right? Because they're always taught to just internalize it and just men in general, right? Um, and I think that it knowing that would make it a little bit easier for them to process through it. The second one I think would probably be um, know that being vulnerable with yourself, with others around you, and the world takes a special kind of courage, special kind of um, leap over over that fear or through that fear. Um, and I I think that everybody should know that because courage is not easy to attain when you're struggling with your mental health because you feel like people don't care even if they do. And to know that it's okay to ask for help because sometimes when you're lifting something heavy that you can't lift on your own, what do? You ask for help. So why is mental health any different?